You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
Hey everybody, Dave here. Have you ever wondered where your personal information is lurking online? Like many of you, I was concerned about my data being sold by data brokers. So I decided to try Delete Me. I have to say, Delete Me is a game changer. Within days of signing up, they started removing my personal information from hundreds of data brokers. I finally have peace of mind knowing my data privacy is protected. Delete Me's team does all the work for you with detailed reports, so you know exactly what's been done. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and use promo code N2K at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and enter code N2K at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/N2K, code N2K.
Today is February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm Maria Varmazis, and this is T-Minus.
T-minus 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift. Go for deploy. Roger, roll.
Starcatcher Industries has been selected by AFWERX for SBIR Phase 1 to advance space-to-space power beaming for vehicles in LEO.
4.
The European Space Agency has awarded a contract to DXC Technology to develop an enterprise AI platform.
3.
ESA has signed a contract with Thales Alenia Space to develop element number 2 of the High-throughput digital and optical network, otherwise known as HydRON, project.
2.
K2 Space has raised $110 million in a Series B funding round.
1.
The United States Space Force's Space Systems Command has awarded a launch service contract to Firefly Aerospace for the branch's newest tactically responsive space mission.
0.
And it is Valentine's Day today, hope you didn't forget. So we're sharing the love for launch with our friends at NASAspaceflight.com, who will be bringing us the Space Traffic Report, wrapping all the launch news from the week that's just passed, and taking a look at what's to come up in the next 7 days. Happy Friday, everybody. You made it. Let's dive into today's intelligence briefing. The United States Space Force's Space Systems Command has awarded a launch service contract to Firefly Aerospace for $21.81 million for VICTUS SOL, which is the branch's newest tactically responsive space mission. VICTUS SOL is an early operational capability to enable the United States to rapidly respond to on-orbit needs and provide flexibility to combatant commanders. The VICTUS SOL launch service contract was completed on the Orbital Services Program 4, Indefinite Delivery, Indefinite Quantity contract, managed by the Rocket Systems Launch Program within SSC's Assured Access to Space Program Executive Office. The Space Safari Office is the lead organization for the USSF's Tactically Responsive Space Initiatives and is the end-to-end mission lead for VICTUS SOL. Jason Kim, CEO of Firefly Aerospace, said in the press release that Firefly has ramped up our alpha production line to meet that demand and provide flexibility to support the Space Force's urgent needs that keep us ahead of the game. VICTUS SOL is the third U.S. Space Force mission that Firefly will support with its responsive alpha launch surface. Firefly Aerospace says they will build on the lessons learned from the VICTUS NOX and VICTUS HAZE missions. The company will continue to launch other government and commercial missions while maintaining an Alpha rocket on standby for the Space Force. Then, at an unknown time, the Space Force will give Firefly a notice to launch for space vehicle deployment. Moving on to K2 Space now, and they have raised $110 million in a Series B funding round. And the milestone comes as K2 celebrates the opening of its new 180,000 square foot factory in Torrance, California, and the success of its first in-space demonstration, flying a number of critical components developed in-house. Since its inception, K2 Space has raised $180 million in equity and won over $50 million in government and commercial contracts. The company says it intends to use the funding to ramp up mass production of its multi-orbit high-power satellite platform, and their first customer mission, called Gravitas, is scheduled to launch in 2026. The European Space Agency has signed a contract with Thales Alenia Space to develop element number 2 of the High-throughput digital and optical network project, also known as HydRON. The contract will see the development of a low Earth orbit satellite collector equipped with advanced end-to-end optical communication capabilities, along with a comprehensive ground segment infrastructure. And the system builds onto the element number 1, creatively named LEO ring, developed by Kepler Communications, announced last year, which will allow HydRON to evolve into a multi-layer system with terminals linking between LEO and geostationary orbit and the Earth. Element number 2 will extend data availability to enhance user data rates and reduce cost. Speaking of the European Space Agency, they have awarded a contract to DXC Technology to develop an enterprise AI platform called Ask ESA. And ESA is looking for the platform to enable the space agency to quickly and securely build and deploy Gen AI agents and other AI-powered solutions. The new platform will be based on generative AI from French startup Mistral AI and will allow the agency to efficiently access high volumes of documents and data. And it's got us wondering, what would you ask ESA? And Starcatcher Industries has been selected by AFWERX for a SBIR Phase 1 to advance space-to-space power beaming for low Earth orbit spacecraft enhancement. And the funding will go towards validating Starcatcher's core space-to-space power beaming tech and enhance them for military readiness. The company is developing the first space energy grid, aiming to address the power limitations in space assets. Starcatcher Network is aiming to beam significant levels of broad-spectrum energy to spacecraft in LEO and beyond. And we're going to be speaking to Starcatcher next month about their network, so make sure you tune in for that chat. And that concludes our briefing for this Day of Love. Our producer Alice Carruth has extra love for more space stories that didn't make today's top 5.
Yes, Maria, we have an update to yesterday's kicker story. Japan's Resilience lunar lander is getting ready for its first jaunt around the moon. And speaking of iSpace, they've also signed an MOU with King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals to collaborate on lunar exploration opportunities. Of course, as always, links to all the stories mentioned can be found in our show notes and at space.n2k.com. Just click on this episode title. And Maria, it's been some time since I've made you groan at one of my dad jokes, so I have some Valentine's puns for you.
Oh, goodness. Go ahead.
Brace yourselves. Are you made of dark matter? Because you're irresistible. I must be a comet, because I can't help but tail you. Our love is like a black hole. It just keeps pulling me in. Can I be your satellite?
Okay,
because I want to revolve.
I think it's enough. Hey, T-Minus crew, tune in tomorrow for T-Minus Deep Space. It's our show for extended interviews, special editions, and deep dives with some of the most influential professionals in the space industry. Tomorrow we have Jeff Thornburg from Portal Space talking about tactical responsiveness on orbit and on demand. Check it out while you're buying all the candy that goes on sale tomorrow, preparing for your next work trip to Florida like I am. Yes, I'm heading back there next week and hope to see another launch, fingers crossed. Or just relaxing after another busy week in the space industry. You don't want to miss it. Oh, and one last note, Monday is a federal holiday here in the United States, so we won't be sharing the daily intelligence briefing, but we will have another great chat from SpaceCom 2025 running. Our guest will be James Draper, the director of the Cape Canaveral Space Force Museum. Definitely tune in for that chat.
Cyber threats are evolving every second, and staying ahead is more than just a challenge, it's a necessity. That's why we're thrilled to partner with ThreatLocker, the cybersecurity solution trusted by businesses worldwide. ThreatLocker is a full suite of solutions designed to give you total control, stopping unauthorized applications, securing sensitive data, and ensuring your organization runs smoothly and securely. Visit threatlocker.com today to see how a default deny approach can keep your company safe and compliant.
On Fridays, we catch up with all the week's launch news thanks to the Space Traffic Report and our friends at NSF.
I'm Alicia Siegel for NSF, and this is your weekly Space Traffic Report for T-Minus Space. We started off the week with a Falcon 9 lifting off from Florida on February 8th at 1918 UTC from Space Launch Complex 40. On board were 21 Starlink satellites headed to low Earth orbit. 8 of them were regular Starlink V2 mini satellites, while the other 13 were direct-to-cell satellites. The first stage for this mission, B-1078, was flying for a 17th time, and it successfully landed on SpaceX's drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. Later that day, we had Rocket Lab's first launch of 2025, with its Electron rocket taking flight on February 8th at 2043 UTC from the company's launch site in New Zealand. Electron was carrying a batch of 5 Kinéis satellites into low Earth orbit for this mission. These Kinéis satellites are part of a constellation of 25 small satellites dedicated to Internet of Things applications, which is why Rocket Lab named this mission IoT for You and Me. Rocket Lab is still under contract to launch another batch of Kinéis satellites on Electron, which should take place later this year. And speaking of batches of satellites and supporting constellations in low Earth orbit, this week we also had 3 launches on the same day, all delivering batches of satellites in support of constellations in low Earth orbit. The first of these 3 took place from California, with the Falcon 9 lifting off on February 11th at 2:09 UTC from Space Launch Complex 4 East. The rocket was carrying 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit. As usual, the first stage for this mission, B-1071, was flight-proven and was flying for a 23rd time, making it the 5th booster to fly that many times. As a veteran flyer, the booster successfully landed on SpaceX's drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Later that day, we had a new rocket debut from China. The first flight of the Changzheng 8A took place on February 11th at 9:30 UTC from Launch Complex 2 at the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. The rocket was carrying a batch of Guowang satellites into low Earth orbit. The Changzheng 8A rocket is an improved version of the standard Changzheng 8 rocket. The rocket shares the same first stage and booster configuration, but the second stage has been widened to match the diameter of the core stage. The second stage has also been redesigned to include a common bulkhead tank design instead of using separate tanks, which gives the rocket's second stage a larger propellant capacity and performance. To compensate for the increased propellant capacity, the second stage is also fitted with upgraded engines with more thrust. All in all, these upgrades increase the rocket's payload capacity by about 40% compared to the standard Changzheng 8. Despite the experimental purpose of the flight, the rocket was carrying the second batch of operational Guowang Space Internet satellites. Little is known about the size and mass of these satellites, and it's unclear how many of them were carried on board, but early tracking data from the U.S. Space Force indicates that up to 8 satellites may have been on board the Changzheng 8A during this mission. Also on February 11th, we had another Starlink launch, this time from Florida. The mission started at 1853 UTC from Space Launch Complex 40 and was carrying another mix of 13 direct-to-cell and 8 Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit. The first stage for this mission, B-1077, was flying for an 18th time, and it successfully landed on SpaceX's drone ship. Just read the instructions. With the Starlink launches performed this week, SpaceX has now launched a total of 7,929 satellites into orbit, of which 899 have re-entered and 6,264 have moved into their operational orbit. Going into next week, we'll have many more Starlink launches, with the first one coming up on February 15th from Florida. The 4-hour launch window for that mission is set to open at 5 o'clock UTC. A few days later, we'll have another Falcon 9 from Vandenberg carrying a batch of Starshield satellites for the National Reconnaissance Office as part of the agency's proliferated space architecture. The roughly 2.5-hour window for this mission is set to open on February 17th at 13:18 UTC. Later in the week, we'll have another Starlink launch, but this one will be special. The mission, Starlink Group 1012, will be the first to try out the new drone ship landing zone in the middle of the Bahamas. Those in the area will be able to see the re-entering first stage and will likely hear a sonic boom as a result. The roughly 4-hour launch window for this mission is set to open on February 18th at 2300 UTC. If schedules hold, shortly after that, an Electron will be launching from New Zealand again with the first satellite of Black Sky's third generation of satellites. The mission, called Fasten Your Space Belts, is currently set to take place within a launch window that opens on February 18th at 2315 UTC. And towards the end of the week, we'll have another Starlink launch from Vandenberg, and this one's somewhat special too, as it's the first launch of a new group of Starlink missions, Group 15. The roughly 4-hour launch window is set to open on February 20th at midnight UTC. I'm Alicia Siegel for NSF, and that's your weekly space traffic report. Now back to T-Minus Space.
We'll be right back.
And now, a message from our sponsor, Zscaler, the leader in cloud security. Enterprises have spent billions of dollars on firewalls and VPNs, yet breaches continue to rise by an 18% year-over-year increase in ransomware attacks and a $75 million record payout in 2024. These traditional security tools expand your attack surface with public-facing IPs that are exploited by bad actors more easily than ever with AI tools. It's time to rethink your security. Zscaler Zero Trust plus AI stops attackers by hiding your attack surface, making apps and IPs invisible, eliminating lateral movement, connecting users only to specific apps, not the entire network, continuously verifying every request based on identity and context, simplifying security management with AI-powered automation, and detecting threats using AI to analyze over 500 billion daily transactions. Hackers can't attack what they can't see. Protect your organization with Zscaler Zero Trust and AI. Learn more at zscaler.com/security.
Welcome back. In case you haven't noticed, N2K is my employer, and that stands for News to Knowledge, by the way. And it started out as a cybersecurity company. And we're still a cybersecurity first company, so we love stories when space and cyber collide. So it should come as no surprise that when German white hat hackers decided to intercept text messages sent via the US satellite communication system Iridium, it was our colleagues at the Cyberwire that shared the news with us. And by the way, white hat hackers are ethical hackers who hack with the permission of a company or organization to discover vulnerabilities and improve security. So put your mind at ease there. I won't lie. My initial reaction to this news was, that's super cool. But, I meant bad because, it's important to secure your assets. And the space is, well, how do we say it politely? A little behind the curve when it comes to protecting against vulnerabilities. And sometimes it takes the good guys to show us what we're doing wrong. So, two white hat hackers with the nicknames Sek and Schneider highlighted severe vulnerabilities in services that tens of thousands of users from the US DoD rely on. And yeah, it's easy if you know how. Even though the DoD uses a secure gateway to route and encrypt its traffic, the hackers were able to see which devices were connecting via the DoD pathway. And then that allowed them to identify and locate DoD users with an accuracy of about 4 kilometers using a home-assembled eavesdropping kit consisting of a commercially available Iridium antenna, a software-defined radio receiver, and a basic computer like the Intel N100 mobile CPU or just the Raspberry Pi mini computer. All off-the-shelf stuff, right? So please, let's use this example as a polite warning to fellow space enthusiasts to start thinking a little harder about what security is in place at your company and with your assets. And if you're a little unsure where to start, we can actually help with that. Just drop us an email at space@n2k.com and we'll gladly help steer you in the right direction to increase your knowledge and awareness about the cybersecurity industry and what risks are out there. And also, if I may add, tune in to the Cyberwire. That's another great resource for you. And that's it for T-Minus for February 14th, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. For additional resources from today's report, check out our show notes at space.n2k.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Hopefully, you love it. Haha. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insight that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. If you like the show, please share a rating and review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to space@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. N2K senior producer is Alice Carruth. Our producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I am your host, Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. Have a great long weekend, and we'll be back on Tuesday.